Hello, my name is Emily Naish. I'm the archivist at Salisbury Cathedral, and today we're celebrating the anniversary of Christopher Wren, the architect, visiting Salisbury Cathedral on the 31st of August 1668. First of all, I am standing here today, hopefully you can see behind me, the Bishop's Palace. This is where Christopher Wren's friend, the Bishop of Salisbury, Seth Ward, lived, and it was here that Wren would have met up with Ward when he came to visit Salisbury back in 1668. As I say, Wren and Ward were great friends, and they were drawn together by their shared interest in medicine, science and mathematics, and both of them actually at one time were appointed Professor of Astronomy at Oxford University. So although Christopher Wren and Bishop Seth Ward were really good friends that had known each other for quite a long time, and Wren would have come and visited his friend at Salisbury, I'm sure, quite a bit in the past. On this particular occasion, 31st of August 1668, Ward had invited Wren to do a particular job, and that job was to inspect, survey and report on the condition of the fabric of Salisbury Cathedral. So when Christopher Wren walked from the Bishop's Palace to the cathedral to begin his inspection, he would have come through a special door in the cloisters which had been put in medieval times as a shortcut for the bishop to get into the cathedral as quickly as possible. And this is the view behind me that Wren would have seen as he walked into the cathedral. So we don't actually know much about the details of Wren's day here inspecting the cathedral, but we do have his report. Luckily, we still have his report, which survives in our archives today. And Wren starts his report by saying, "The Cathedral Church of Salisbury seeming to threaten no inconsiderable decay, it is desired that the state of it be fully represented and the particular defects enumerated so proper remedies may be applied to restore it, where age, injuries of weather or the neglect of in times of trouble have occasional weaknesses and tendency towards ruin." So rather convoluted language, but basically he's saying he's coming to have a look to see where the problems are caused by the weather and also by times of trouble. So these times of trouble that Wren refers to in his report are about the English Civil War and the Commonwealth, which stretched between 1642 and 1660. And during this time, the worship and the day-to-day running and management of the cathedral was radically disrupted, to such an extent that actually there was no official maintenance and repair work carried out on the building for that period of time. Although, as I say, there was no official repair work carried out, but secretly some of the workmen still worked on the cathedral, and they wouldn't tell anyone who was paying their wages, but it's believed that it was some of the wealthy people in the city were supporting the cathedral by paying these workmen's wages at that time. Also, it had happened in the recent times, before Wren came here, that the cathedral had suffered a lot from storms and lightning strikes. And we know for sure that there was one lightning strike which left a 200-foot long crack in the spire of the tower. So you can see with all these problems that have been happening, it's not surprising that the bishop was getting a bit concerned about the stability of the spire and the cathedral in general. Now, Wren starts his report by being very complimentary about the cathedral. He says, "The whole pile is large and magnificent and may justly be accounted one of the best patterns of architecture in the age wherein it was built." So he's very impressed with the cathedral. It was quite common at that time to call a big building a pile. Seems a bit odd to us, but that's what they use. And Wren was also impressed with how well proportioned the building was, and he particularly admired the simplicity of decoration. He writes that it was clear that the original medieval architect knew that nothing could add beauty to light, and that he trusted in a stately and rich plainness that his marble shafts gave to his work. So Wren was basically saying, "I like this building," and he gives it the thumbs up. So we're now inside the cathedral. We're actually almost directly below the spire and the tower in an area which is called the Spire Crossing. In the medieval period, the main part of the cathedral building was built between 1220 and 1258. the spire was actually added later. We don't know exactly when, but it was probably in the early 1300s. And Wren was particularly concerned with the condition of the spire and the tower, because the tower, when the cathedral was first built, was never originally designed to support the weight of the spire. It was added later. And Wren, in his report, described the weight of the spire as being supported by 4 pillars, which he says was like a table upon its 4 legs. Now, during his visit, Wren wanted to check whether the spire was leaning in any particular direction, and to do this he let down a plumb line, which is a piece of lead acting as a weight at the end of a long piece of string. And Wren let down this plumb line, let it down from the top of the tower, where the spire starts, to the 2nd floor below. And from this he calculated that the west wall and the east wall of the cathedral were each leaning between 3 1/4 inches and 3 1/2 inches to the west. And the south and north walls were leaning 5 1/2 inches to the south. Wren, he recommends in his report that this plumbing should take place on a regular basis to monitor any further movements of the spire and the tower. But he also very reassuringly says that there's not at present any great danger of the spire collapsing because of how well the medieval builders braced the walls of the tower and together when they put the spire on top. So that's really reassuring. So there was no really serious structural work that was needed to be done to the spire, although he did make recommendations to strengthen the some of the woodwork in the spire, some of the timber, and he also recommended that the top of the spire should be braced together with what he called a curb of iron made of 8 pieces fixed clean around on the outside. And he actually included in his report a diagram of how he thought this curve of iron should look. And he specified that the iron should be forged at shipping ports, where they work anchors and other large works for ships, for I have found by experience that large works cannot be wrought sound with little fire and small bellows. So we have a clear recommendation there from Wren that the top of the spire should be braced with this curve of iron. Welcome to the archive. This is where we keep everything of historical interest at the cathedral. This is the cathedral's memory here. And I'm just going to get out a book behind me in one of these boxes, which continues the story of Wren and his visit to the cathedral in 1668. So this book is one of a series of what's called the Chapter Act books. So the chapter is the main governing committee for the cathedral, and we are very lucky to have in our archive the records of their meetings going back to 1329. It's an incredible series from 1329 up to the present day of these acts or minutes of the chapter. And in this particular book, in an entry dated the 5th of October 1669, we have a draft letter which was written by the cathedral authorities, in which they refer to Christopher Wren. They call him Dr. Christopher Wren because he wasn't knighted until later. And they refer to the fact that he came to the cathedral to do his report. And actually they say he came on 2 occasions. It's only because of this letter that we know that he came twice. Before we used to think he'd only visited once, but he came on 2 occasions. Unfortunately, we have no details of his second occasion, but we do luckily still have the report that he made. So he came here, and it says that they are now trying to act and to implement his recommendations because they recognise that basically the building is deteriorating. They do say that they were going to start work very soon. So they started work the previous year. So we do know that they did actually start work. We do know that Wren's recommendations were taken seriously and that things were done. And we know that partly because of the reference in this book here, and partly because it does indicate, looking at some of the accounts of the purchase of timber and the like, that repairs were made to the timbers up in the roof spaces. So although unfortunately they didn't leave us a list of exactly what work they did following Wren's report, we can sort of get an understanding that things did happen. They did, we do know for sure that he, in Wren's own words, braced the lofty spire of Salisbury, because there is a letter in which Wren mentions that in the collection of the Bodleian Library in Oxford. So, as I say, by drawing together all these different clues, we know that something did actually happen here. It's a question that's often asked, okay, Wren made his report, but did anything actually happen afterwards? And it definitely did happen. So it seems likely that that curve of iron, which he recommended should be put around the outside of the top of the spire, was done. However, there is no surviving 17th century ironwork still on the spire, so unfortunately we can't point to anything on the spire today and say this was definitely Wren's work here. Hello, we're still inside the cathedral, but I'm standing by a case which shows off some of our documents and items from our archive collection. Now, if you come to the cathedral any time from now until the end of October, you'll be able to see Christopher Wren's report that he wrote on the cathedral in 1668. We have it displayed in the case here, and it's actually opened at the page which shows the diagram that he drew himself, demonstrating how he thinks these bands of this curve of iron bars should be joined together. Also in the case we've got a portrait of Bishop Seth Ward, and another document which is a little bit behind me, which is actually rather faded, so it's a bit difficult to see, but it's all, it does actually have Christopher Wren's signature on, which is really exciting, and that actually relates to his involvement in work done in the cathedral choir a bit later on in the 1600s, but it's got his signature on it, so it's really nice. So our volunteer guides here at the cathedral are doing some special talks about Wren and Bishop Seth Ward, again to celebrate the fact that Wren came here on the 31st of August. And you can come and see these talks, which are completely free. They're quite short, lasting 10 or 15 minutes, and you can come and experience that on Thursdays and Saturdays at 2 o'clock. So come along then, no need to book, just turn up, and one of our guides will tell you a lot more about Wren and Seth Ward and their involvement at the cathedral here.